I think the thing that's being exposed in the midst of all of this is also the deep, deep patriarchy, misogyny, and homophobia in the Black community. It's like all jumbled together, which is sad, right? Because it's like you watch hip hop artists go above and beyond to prove they're not gay, but it's like inadvertently you're communicating a message about people who are gay. And so it's like, what is on trial here is not sexuality. Diddy probably just should have came out. But I mean, it was the 90s, right? He probably could have came out as bi or whatever, but he didn't, and all this is happening, right? But it doesn't mean that like we get to come out and demonize people who are gay, right? And who are openly gay and happily in relationships with other men. Like, these are things that have to get discussed in the midst of talking about this. What's on trial here is not gayness, okay? Like, what's on trial here is predatory sexual behavior, right? Misogyny. That's what's on trial here. So, I mean, I was born in the 80s, grew up in the 90s, so Diddy was real important in my life. Like, played a soundtrack for my life in a lot of ways. Bad Boy Records was like my entire adolescence. So thinking about that and watching these things happen, I feel sobered, because it's bringing to mind these things about like what you do with little, you do with much, right? And it's making me sad about unhealed trauma in my community, the stigma around therapy in my community. And so it's easier to beat a woman and buy the tapes than to sit on a couch and talk about your trauma. It's easier to treat women like commodities than it is to deal with your father wound. You know, like, this is a shame. And I think it's beautiful of God to say like, hey, like, I'm not respecter of person. Everybody can get it, because light just exposes darkness. And in that way, it's not personal, right? It just, light and truth do what they do. And so if that's the case, then light and truth are going to come from my life too. And so it makes me sober, and it makes me think about like how I'm living and what I'm doing when nobody's looking. It's like, I want to start asking myself questions about what I do with my own power and access, because I think you're going to emulate. Then, you know, let's say you make it big and you get a bag, you will be the same person that you are now. Money, power, access, and no accountability in a capitalistic society that celebrates money more than it celebrates character. And that's why it's happening in the church and in entertainment, because at the end of the day, the roots of this stuff are exactly the same. So it behooves us, you know, it behooves me. Like, where is patriarchy and misogyny and toxicity at work in my own life? Where have I even ingested that in terms of how I look at myself, in terms of how I look at other people? Like, the uproar right now around transness and sexuality is all deeply embedded in what is coming out right now. So in one way, this is forcing a conversation and hopefully some soul searching. When a big person falls like this, it is an opportunity for us to look at ourselves. Let's not just say, Diddy should have been better. No, let's all do this work. Diddy going to jail and he needs to stay in jail. But let's all do this work of really recognizing and dealing with misogyny and patriarchy in the ways that we have demonized femininity and womanhood, right? I can't imagine that I'm just walking around the earth free from any kind of misogyny, right? Like, that's just not true. We grew up in a society like this, right? I mean, I think about stuff I watched in the 90s. I watched Friends, MTV, and I'm just thinking about the way that women were talked about outside of hip hop. It's just, there is a cultural apocalypse taking place of things that need to be dealt with. And, you know, I'm here for it, but not in a way that's gloating, like, you got yours, but in a way that's like, damn, is there any of this at work in my own life and in my own relationships? And if so, like, I'm trying to make stuff right.